TOP stands for triple optimized, right? Of mind, body, spirit. You're a really good example of that. Somebody has the external success people want to see, like business, the lifestyle success, which people see. Then there's the fitness, like the healthy stuff, which people see. But you also put a lot of attention into like your psyche and your mindset.
What comes up for me right away, I'm like, if we actually trying to be the triple optimized, it's almost like that might prevent at least me in the past of being like, oh, I need to be perfect, I need to be so optimized, I need to hit all these milestones, right? And then actually prevents me from being vulnerable, accepting my shortcomings, and actually being optimized, right? So
Right. And so that's part of what I want to do is like redefine what optimized means,
nice.
and because there's the mindset piece, which people don't dive into a lot. And then the
Hmm.
other aspect of a lot of this stuff is like the energy side of things. But just like,
Energy.
yeah, like working at that level.
It's the most efficient way. I think we both have, because we both have tech background, that we have that mindset of
Yeah.
optimization and what's the most
And
effective way.
right. And the effective, the most efficient. Totally. Yeah. Literally,
And
that's why I'm doing this. It's like what it all comes down to.
exactly. So energy, right? It's like the most. It's more efficient than feelings, and feelings are more efficient than thoughts.
Hey, Kateryna, thank you for coming on the podcast and recording this episode.
Hey, Andre, happy to be
Yeah,
here.
I'm so excited. I've got a little quick intro on our guest today, on who Kateryna is. We met in Mexico, right, at a entrepreneur event, business event, whatever you want to call it. Became friends over that week, and so I'm excited to have you here. And here's what I wrote about you, and then you can give your little spiel, your
Let's
little intro afterwards. But I wrote down that for you, you're not only killing it in business, but you're an experienced digital nomad, a great salsa dancer, and you speak several languages, all of which are very like accomplished things. They take a lot of time and effort. But you also put a lot of time and attention into your mindset and your psyche. So when I think of the type of people who embody what I envision is as top human, you're definitely one of them, with all these aspects of like the lifestyle, the health, and the mental side too. It's all really important. So kind of nailing those three, right? Health, wealth, and relationships is
Wow,
is
I'm honored. Thank you.
because you have that, right? You have the success that people see on the outside,
Right.
and you're also really focused on the internal success, right? The psyche, the mindset, which people don't see.
Yeah, which is much more important.
Which, well, there you go.
The only one.
So yeah, do you want to kind of add to that? Do you want to give yourself a little intro?
Yeah, no, I think you captured the high level. I would say that for me, only in the last few years, where I actually switched to that internal success that you're talking about.
Mm,
And before, to be honest, it was pretty unbalanced. So it's been a journey for me in the last few years. I think in 2019, that's when I started traveling.
okay.
It was a remote year, signed up, but
Yeah.
I was in Silicon Valley for a decade, being, traditional Silicon Valley technical founder with all the grind, all like,
Yeah.
let's find the milestones, let's be the unicorn. And um, I think like end of 2018, I was burned out. I was completely spent. I was very smart. I would say was like very brilliant in the IQ part of it,
Hmm.
but it was just I kind of hit the wall. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know what's wrong. I don't even know how to fix it, but I just can't keep going like I'm going because it's been a decade of just going and going, going, and me coming from Ukraine, from that background of switching to the US. It was a lot of just keep going, keep grinding, keep achieving.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it didn't really bring me that peace and fulfillment, me
Hmm.
personally, right? And yeah, at that point, I basically keep the story short, I booked the remote year for 4 months and I flew to Santiago, Chile,
Yes.
far away from San Francisco. You can get away like South
You went farther
and
than I did, I
Poland.
think.
Yeah, like pretty much Patagonia, like at the very south
Very
of.
bottom. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's where my journey started. I was like, wow, there are things much more than Silicon Valley bubble and
And
achieving,
it is a
that
bubble.
external success. Yeah. No, bubble, people there are brilliant. It's amazing. But I think what a lot of us are missing there is the balance of, and like the why, like
Hmm.
why are you trying to achieve that success? That alignment between here's what your customers want, here's what you're doing, but here's your soul alignment,
Yes.
what makes you wake up in the morning and why you're passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and that's when I started. But because I was such an achiever, I was like, well, I can't stop achieving.
That
so,
makes two of
so I
us.
switched to confidence. That's why I became so good. I was like, if not computer programming, creating tech product, it needs to be like something else. And now I would say it's much more balanced for me. Like when I hear the word success or optimized,
Hmm.
for me, it's not just that external success. I mean, actually, if you just have an external success, sometimes I look at people, I'm like, I kind of feel bad for you because I know exactly where you're at. I've been
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I'm just like, oh, and you don't even know what you don't know.
'Cause we all have
So,
blind spots. Yeah.
exactly. So hopefully your podcast is going to help. People are going to listen and be like, oh, I didn't even know people think like that. I didn't even know this exists. Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, I definitely hope so. It's really
Mhm.
a challenge to unplug somebody
Oof,
and
from Matrix.
change their thinking.
Hmm.
It really is. I was looking for that, and it still took me years to like fully make like a good switch. But yeah, it's work to unplug somebody from their way of thinking, whatever it is.
Do you think you can even do that for people? Because I feel like unless a person is ready,
Right.
like you will try to unplug them, you will pull them
I'm not
out of
in the
it.
business of unplugging people, like if
Yeah.
someone's looking, that then
Hmm.
like, all right, let's go. Because
Yeah.
for that's a big reason why I'm starting this. And I resonate with a lot of what you said. Not only is our journeys like very similar, Silicon Valley, digital nomad,
Also
salsa
dancing.
dancing. Yeah. I can't believe, I mean, you lasted a decade in Silicon Valley. I was there,
Yeah.
if you include school, I was there 6 years, two and
Yeah.
a half for school and like
Hmm.
three professionally. But that alignment of what you were talking about, of like what you're passionate about, plus, your
Yeah.
success in business. The reason why I decided to start this was I don't want other people who are struggling to grow and like make these transitions to have to struggle. Because I'm
Hmm.
very much, achiever. Like I can do things on my own. I can figure things out. And when I started to try and figure out my mind and my psyche and my mental health and some physical
Hmm.
health things that I was having as well, there were so many things that people could not help me with or tell me or explain, or they didn't know
Hmm.
the answers. So I had to literally find a lot of answers myself,
Figure it out by yourself. Yeah.
which
Hmm.
thankfully I'm good at. If I
Yeah.
wasn't good at it, who knows where I'd be right now, right? But
Yeah.
thankfully I'm good at
No,
figuring
it's
stuff out
amazing.
on my own.
But imagine if you had somebody who done the same thing and could relate
Right.
to you and
And so that's
coach you.
who I want to be for people, right?
Mhm.
That's my like purpose. That's my why, right? My soul alignment,
Mhm.
as you said, with Top Human. It's helping people who want the help but don't know what the answers are.
Um,
Don't know
yeah.
it's literally the how. Like what's the how? Like the how to.
And it's literally, I was reflecting on it today and yesterday, um, on just in general how much people can save of their life by using
Yeah.
somebody else to walk them through the same things versus be like, oh, I'm good at it. And I think that's where vulnerability comes in, because
Mm-hmm.
and self-acceptance and self-love, because if you have that, you can be like, hey, it's okay that I don't know, right? It's okay that I'm failing, it's okay that I'm stuck. And only when you accept that it's okay, then you can be like, oh, it's okay, and who can help me,
Right.
then you can like go and actually ask for help, or even look, because if you're not looking, you're not going to find it, right?
Right.
So being open and vulnerable with yourself and others and sharing, that's how you can even get
Yeah.
there.
And being willing, right? But like you said,
Hmm.
awareness is step one.
Yeah.
Like you saw my talk at in Mexico for beer and
Oh yeah.
pancakes, and like that whole slide of like 2 columns. This is like I have all this stuff. How do I fix it? Like I was very aware, but just because
Wow.
you're aware doesn't mean you have like that's not enough, right? It's step one, but you still have to do the work.
Yeah. Do you have any particular like step by step system? I know I'm a system thinker, but I'm just thinking, right? Like all these advanced techniques for people who just starting out, it's kind of over the head, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have any things that you recommend people to start with, like I don't know, meditation or?
Yeah, I mean that's what my MindWorks program is. So
Hmm.
the MindWorks program, it's what it's designed for is like even if you've never meditated before, we start baby
Hmm.
steps, but we very intensely focus on the mind and like your
Hmm.
mental posture. And it's very personal. It's
Mental posture, I love it.
a lot of us had bad physical posture, right? Like I
Yeah.
did. But like our mental posture too. It's like it's not just your state of mind, which can be like an hour to hour thing, but your kind of
Mm,
personality, your mental posture is like, well, that's how you've been for, probably a year or multiple years. And I
yeah.
knew mine was bad and I was like, I need to fix this. And no one could really like and I had been meditating and a lot of stuff. So um yeah, so that's my program, but to start,
Hmm.
just start. Like have some sort of practice that is
Yeah.
internally focused. That's a habit. For me it was
Yeah.
meditation. And I
Yeah.
think
For me too.
I think it's the
Hmm.
best one. I really do.
Yeah.
What got me started on meditating, there were a couple of things, but it was Tim Ferriss. It was one of his quotes.
Oh, nice.
He has a quote. I think it was like from Abraham Lincoln too. He's like, if I had 4 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first two sharpening the axe.
Mm,
And meditation is sharpening the axe.
wow.
And so if you
I
do
love
that
it.
a little by little every day, like it's going to
Yeah.
change. And then and then MindWorks dives into like specific things to do in your head while you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was very helpful the Headspace app
Mm-hmm.
for the meditation, because it kind of gave me the structure. Because otherwise, it's like
Yeah.
there are so many different types of meditation and so many different ways to do
Like the
it.
word sports. There's so
Yeah,
many
you don't
different
know what
types of sports.
start. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've done it for 2 years, maybe, Headspace
Okay. Oh,
before.
so you're doing that now. You're still using it.
No, that's,
Okay.
I mean, now it's more like Jose Silva method and a little bit like different, but I do it by myself.
Yeah.
But no, when I just started, I mean, I still had my startup, still was Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
full on grind. But yeah, a couple of years was just to get to the point where um, I could stop my anxiety, for example, or I could stop,
Mm.
because right, the anxiety works as a loop. It's like a spiral.
At
You
least you
get
knew you
one
had
little
anxiety.
right. It got me a little bit to get there.
Because I didn't know I had anxiety.
And then I was like, oh, this is what's called anxiety.
Right. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I feel like we're all, I don't know, at least me, I'll speak for me, but I don't even have a vocabulary for emotions. I mean,
Right.
ideally, like, we're all getting the childhood to just an education on,
Yeah.
what is how is it to feel anxious? How is it to feel embarrassed? How is it to feel proud? How is it to feel
But we're not
supported?
taught that. Not all
No,
of
we're
us,
not at all.
you know.
So yeah,
I mean,
that's like
you saw me at the last day of beer and pancakes, right? We were sitting on those chairs by the pool, and
yeah.
my body posture was in a way, and you were like, "Oh my god, are you sad?" And like, I didn't even know I was sad, right? Like, even as
That's
adults, we
right.
can get to this point where we aren't aware of what our body is telling us,
Hmm.
you know. And so, like, building that mind body connection is so important to start learning these skills and learning our emotions, and then like the energy behind it, right? Which is
Yeah,
like really what emotions are,
because
energy and
it's
emotions.
super powerful, right? Like
So
if
powerful.
you actually listen to your emotions,
Hmm.
that's the compass for your life, right? Because if you can identify, oh, I go to this job and I'm unfulfilled and I feel sad, I feel stuck, I feel all this. If you can actually realize further that's what you feel, you'll be like, oh, maybe this job is not aligned with what I should be doing,
Yeah.
right? Um, or then you do something that you truly love and you identify that you feel joy and you feel fulfillment, then you'd be like, oh, let me lean in that more,
Hmm.
and then kind of like a compass of where you go. But if you don't even know what you feel, if you just like, oh, I feel bad, I don't know
Or
what
if
that
you
means,
push
like,
them down, which we're usually taught to do
yeah.
socially. It's
Mhm.
like emotions, I don't feel those. You know,
Yeah,
I'm a
like
robot.
that
Like, I'm a
emotion.
man. I'm whatever. Like,
Yeah, exactly. No, it's super powerful.
yeah. And I mean, when I graduated from Berkeley, even
Hmm.
then,
Nice.
yeah, even
Hmm.
then I knew I do like I was thinking this when I was in like my first job. I was like, I do not want to be a software developer forever. Like, I don't want to be
Mm.
that guy who's like two desks over from me and in his like 40s.
Poor guy.
Poor guy. So, no, because
Poor
I was
guy.
like, I don't want this to be my lifelong, like my career long term. And I stayed in that career, 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
It's still kind of like my thing during the day. So
Mhm.
we know, and this is another thing, right? I still don't know the answer to this one. Why do we still do things that are bad for us, like humans? We stay in jobs we don't like, right? That's one. That's my example. We have bad, like we smoke, we
Mhm.
eat food that's bad for us, or whatever. Like there's things that we know are bad, and we still do them. I haven't figured that one out, but that's just trying to get rid
Tell
of
you,
as many of those as possible, and start listening to like your intuition and your emotions, like you
yeah.
said, right? And like everything changes when you do that.
So I read a book recently. I finished the book. It's called Existential Kink.
Existential king.
Kink
Oh, kink. I'll have to check that one out.
is the premise is that if we take as an assumption that having is an evidence of wanting,
Having is evidence of wanting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So if we say, and like if I say, like, oh, I want to be super fit, right? But then I'm not, then instead of, kind of overlooking that, be like, oh, let me see if I actually want to be unfit. Or, for example, if, I don't know, a
Right.
person is late all the time, right? And, they apologize. Like, I have a couple friends like that. Like, no matter what, like I tell them, I actually tell them a different time now. But yeah, like if you think and you dig deeper, be like, and I'm talking about the not one-offs, right? Like not like an accident happened,
Right.
but
But if it's a
it's
pattern
a
in your life,
chronicle pattern,
yep,
right?
it's chronic.
And you're late, then it'd be like, oh, maybe I enjoy being late.
Right.
And if you accept that, be like, oh, it's okay that I enjoy being late, but like, why? I'm just curious. And then you'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, maybe it gives me a sense of importance. And then people actually pay
Mhm.
attention to me. And I get that validation that I matter,
Right.
right? And then forgive me and they give me love this way. So if you underlying things, you're like, oh, okay. So the premise of the book is that is not that we are actually taking joy And that's where all the shadow works comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that if we own our shadow and we accept that on some levels we actually enjoy torturing ourselves and people, that there is a darker side of us that is not like this light and perfect, that we're human beings and kind of part of it.
Yeah.
That the problem is not that we torture people, the problem is that we're not torturing them exquisite enough. Which is,
Exquisite enough.
yeah, so for
Mm.
example, right, the same example of you being late, you're kind of torturing people by being late, like,
For a
which
yeah, for certain definitions of torture.
but if you accept it and be like, hey, I'm accepting that I'm doing it, but instead of just
Mm-hmm.
doing that on this little level, how about I just make something so incredible and completely blow these people's minds that they will never and ever forget it for the rest of their lives. And I actually make an impact that way, right? Because at the end of the day, I think it's not about torture and not torturing. Human nature that we want
Yeah.
to be important and make an impact in certain way. But if you accept sometimes like this dark sides, we might on the subconscious level actually enjoy having bad patterns in our life, that it gives the freedom to move past and then actually choose how we want to make that impact.
Yeah. And being late's not, I mean, I think using the word torture for being late to a meeting is a little extreme.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
it's even to do that, right? You have to want to look internally,
Yeah.
and there's a really good God, there's a couple of things I thought of as when you were saying that. The first one was this book called Loving What Is. I don't know if
Mm.
you've heard of that one by Byron
I've
Katie.
heard about it. I haven't read
In
it.
that book, she talks about like, okay, you write down the sentence of whatever you feel about some other person. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pissed off at coworker Joe because he's late all the time, or I'm mad at my significant other because she does XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
And then you literally beneath that you rewrite it with your name in there instead, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
like, I get mad at myself because I'm late all the time, or I get mad at myself
Mm-hmm.
because I do XYZ. And then that's how you start to turn it inside. And then you look for evidence for how is that true, right? Like what you were
Mm-hmm.
saying, maybe I do like being late. Maybe I do enjoy being unfit. Because otherwise, you
Mm-hmm.
have the cognitive dissonance of like,
Yeah.
I need to be this certain way, but I'm actually being this way. But
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
minds are like just going back and forth of like, I should do this, but I'm this. I should do this, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And it wastes so much mental energy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much. It's God. It's
No, absolutely. Like, after I was doing this work, like the shadow work, I had this moment of like matrix moment
mm,
where I realized like, wow, I'm as a human being, I'm so powerful because all the things in my life, the bad patterns, the things that I thought that I don't like or whatever, it's actually I generated them.
yep.
It's not like life happened to me, it happened through me, right? So
Yeah.
everything in my life, I have exactly what I actually wanted. It just, I mean,
It's
maybe
just
I,
subconscious.
yeah,
And there's
subconscious,
survival
exactly.
mechanisms in there too. So it's not necessarily what
Hmm.
you wanted, but it's definitely what you needed at some
Hmm.
point in time. And then
Yeah.
some of those stick. And now it's part of who you are.
Yeah, you don't let go, you don't need it anymore, right? But you
But we
keep
don't
kind of,
need them anymore. So how do you let them
right,
go?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this. What did Carl Jung said? Um, Still you make unconscious conscious, it's going to rule your life
And
and
you'll
you're gonna
call
call
it
it
fate.
fate.
I love that quote.
Yeah. But it takes courage, right? Like it's not easy. It's so not easy to be working on this.
So here's my thing, right? We say it's not easy. It's not
Mm-hmm.
easy because we don't know how to do it. And what's the opposite of easy?
Mm-hmm.
Hard.
Mm-hmm.
And we use the word hard for stuff like, oh, it's so hard, and like that thing's so hard. Like, okay, most of those things are not hard. Like a table is hard, right? Like this is hard. These things are uncomfortable.
Mm.
And if you can
Uncomfortable.
reframe it that way, and then you start listening to all the successful people, the Tom Billius, the Alex Hermosis, of like, if you can be uncomfortable like a little bit every day and push through that, like that's how you get to the success thing. And so
Yeah.
if you can just realize like these things aren't hard, they're just uncomfortable, and be
Mm.
willing to walk through that fire on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis, then that's how you get through this stuff. And that's how you let it go
Mm-hmm.
too. When it comes to emotions, that's also how you let it go, which is great.
Yeah.
Like that's the how to right there. But most people are not willing to voluntarily go through the discomfort.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also a fear of unknown,
Totally.
because if you start doing this and there are feelings that come up, for me at least in the beginning, I just felt like it will never end. It's like you open in this Pandora box
Mm,
and it will just never run out. And you're like, well, I need to be productive. I need to get stuff done.
right.
And I have all these feelings, stop it. But it's, the more I start doing the work, and I really love the book by David Hawkins, Letting Go, where he actually talks through the process of letting go one
I don't
thing
think
by
I've read
another
that
thing.
one.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's and different vibrations of emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have love, like the highest vibration. You can have fear, and you can work it up. So it's not necessarily you will go from fear directly to love, but you will have courage somewhere in the middle, and that will push you
Oh yeah.
through. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Or sometimes you would even have emotions and you cannot let them go, but you can let go of resistance to even feel that emotion first. Be like, okay, like at least
Right.
like I'm willing to even look at it.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like the more you do it, the easier it becomes, because
Everything's
your
fun
mind
until
is
it's
like,
easy.
oh, it's not as bad as you think it is. Like ice bath, right?
Yeah.
First you're like, whoa, I'm gonna die. But then you're like, oh, it's actually not as bad. And then you're like, oh, I can see the results afterwards. So it's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
actually pleasurable in some way.
Right? It's like, oh, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
And one thing too, which is interesting, is you said, sometimes there's these emotions which we can't let go, or that maybe we're
Mhm.
not ready to yet,
But lot.
but or
Yeah.
they're blocked, right? So
Mhm.
these get stored in your body,
Yeah.
right? They
Mhm.
really do. So even if you want, and this is like the state I've been in or was for several years, and once I realized it, I was like, dang, okay, I really need to do the work. Which is
Mhm.
like, it's stuck in your body and you can't think your way out of it. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do you're gonna think or talk through that's gonna release this trapped energy from your body, these trapped emotions.
Mhm.
And so just when you were saying too about like the ice bath, like the first
Mhm.
time, like, oh, it's really bad, but after you do it a couple times, it's not so bad. Like that happened to me when I started taking cold showers. I literally
Mm.
couldn't breathe in the shower. And then
Yeah.
you train yourself. So part of that is like you train your nervous system.
Mhm.
And so the
Yeah.
nervous system is affected by all these trapped emotions and stuff. And so like working with the nervous system is super fascinating as you work on your own and you start to learn like, oh, clearly there's something blocked here, or
Mhm.
if I do this exercise like an ice bath or a cold shower, I'm starting to kind of do the physical level of the work. And there's ways
Yeah.
to like release the trapped emotions physically too, which are really interesting. And that
Yeah.
gets into like bioenergetics and all that stuff
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
which is so cool. But that's what I was thinking when you were saying those things.
Yeah. No, I think it's I think sometimes it's even a problem of being smart.
It,
All these intellectual people,
it is.
us being very intellectual, like you and I definitely can relate to that, that we are so smart that we can outsmart a lot of even psychologists.
Literally, like, like I'm trying to tell someone, like, because I've spoken with several therapists over the years, and I
Hmm.
try to tell them, like, I need help, like, I'm asking for help, and they still can't, like, like I might sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't.
But I found myself that when when you're not when you're in the beginning stages, especially, right? Like you don't want to feel emotions, so you suppress them yourself. But then, let's say a therapist wants to get you to those emotions. You on your subconscious level, so don't want to even go there. You'll be like, okay, how do I escape it? But you're like, you cannot just get up and leave. You're stuck in the meeting. But I found myself like, wow, I'm actually so smart and such a good storyteller sometimes that I can totally bullshit all those therapists and come up with some story
Yeah.
to lead them to some other place. And you're like,
Were you doing that consciously or subconsciously?
no, subconsciously, yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that I'm doing it.
Right.
To me, I would just explain things, and but I think that's where it's so valuable to do some body work and some
Yes.
energy work, because you cannot trick your body. Like when you get
Yeah.
in that ice bath or you start doing maybe breath work, it's just something that gets activated that you cannot fully, as long as you actually do the work and let's say you breathe and push through, but you cannot talk your way out of it. You it just happens. So I
No,
feel
but
like,
you can
yeah.
think yourself kind of like out of it.
Oh, you can think yourself out of breath work, you think?
So
Tell me.
if you're like once you're deep in it, no,
Yeah.
because I've done it a few times and
Hmm.
it's you definitely get it to like natural high kind of state, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing other things that are maybe require a little bit more of your effort, like this is why meditating is so hard for people
Mm.
because they start to
Hmm.
think, and thinking is the opposite of feeling.
Yeah.
And it's because of so like you were saying, like smart people like in BNP and like that, like my friends over the years, they've told me like, Andre, you're like hyper intelligent. I don't know what my IQ is or whatever, and like I probably don't score
Yeah.
super high, but like I'm really good at a lot of stuff and I've figured things out on my own. But it's a
Yeah.
problem because
Mhm.
in our society being smart is the same as like intelligence, which is like thinking. Like you're book
Mhm.
smart, you're school smart, all of
Yep.
that. And like it's literally the opposite of feeling and intuition and you be like
Yes.
embodying your soul basically.
But EQ over
The
IQ.
the EQ, which
Mm.
which is funny. Like I read that book about EQ years ago and I was like it I was like I understand how it makes sense to know, but they're still putting words to everything.
Mm.
And words are a human thing that we invented way after emotions existed. And so
Yeah.
even words can be a problem sometimes,
Right.
right? Because when you get into like the breath work or like deep meditations and what I do in mind works, it's like we get to the point where there's no words. It's
Yeah.
just all sensation. It's all somatic. It's all feeling. It's all energy.
Yeah.
Because
And
we just
it's
like we stick to it otherwise. Like we latch onto this word and then like we start thinking about it. And then like
what do they call it? Intellectualizing.
intellectualizing.
Intellectualizing the emotions, feelings, right? So we think about them, we think the feelings versus we feel the feelings.
Right. Someone told me this literally like 2 months ago because I'm an Enneagram 6. And he said,
Oh,
"Oh, so
you are.
you think your feelings?" And I never thought of
Mm-hmm.
it that way, which is funny
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot. But I was
Mm-hmm.
like, it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think
You think or you feel?
I feel I feel like people should even start asking others, not how you doing, or but be like, hey, how you feeling?
Yeah.
Imagine imagine people like, hey Andre, how you feeling today?
And I bet most people would still respond with, "I'm good. I'm fine."
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, that was such a weird thing for me too, coming
Mm.
from Ukraine when I just moved.
Oh, really interesting.
It took me a year. It took me a year to switch, to actually stop telling people how I'm actually doing when they ask, and then
You
not
made
be
that
offended.
conscious switch to like match the culture.
I had to work it, of course.
Wow.
Well, in Ukraine, if you actually ask somebody how they're doing, you actually ask somebody how they're doing.
Right.
You
So
like their
so what would it look like? I'm just curious now. When you came to the
yeah.
US and someone asked you how you're doing, like how much time would you spend answering that question?
I would start on telling them about how I'm doing, maybe like 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Because otherwise, it's like I'm good, which is like 2 seconds, maybe, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had to
Interesting.
switch in the, I remember the elevator things because people
Okay.
ask me, coworkers, I would go in and you literally have maybe what, 10 seconds till you get to a different floor.
Right.
And they will ask me how I'm doing. I'm like, I start answering everything.
I don't have enough time for this. You want to grab coffee?
And I was like, why did you
Wow.
ask me?
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, there was I had to work through, and then also learning to ask and not expect and not be like, oh, you didn't tell me. So yeah, that was a process.
Right. Right. Yeah, because that's really interesting. Because how would you actually start that if you actually wanted to have that conversation? If you wanted to actually ask somebody, "Hey, how are you feeling? How are you doing?" Like
I
you'd have
don't
to
think
ask
people,
them like 10 times in a row before they like got it.
yeah. Sometimes like now when I do want people to switch, I literally like touch them on their hand or something and be like, hey,
Oh, that's
no,
cool.
actually, how you doing? Because
Yeah.
it gets them out of the thinking and be like, oh, somebody touched me.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
But yeah, like nobody does it in the US. No.
No, they really don't. And that
Right.
resonates for me because even when I was in college,
Hmm.
probably even after college, like I didn't know how to have a deep conversation.
Mm.
I would literally Google question like, how do I have a deep conversation? Like, what types
Oh
of
my gosh.
questions do I ask?
Oh
Well,
my gosh. I was asking that to my therapist actually. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
really? Yeah. So we have this like so superficial culture. Like, if we can't even interact with other human beings on a deeper level than something that's superficial, how are we going to even like interact with ourselves on a deeper level?
Mm. Or I would say it's the opposite because we don't interact with ourselves, we cannot interact with others.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a chicken and egg kind of thing. It's
Right.
both, right? It's on both sides, and both sides fuels the other side,
Yeah.
right?
But yeah, I remember for me when I finally realized how to do it, I was like, this is so obvious, Katerina. Like, well, because I was even having conversations with my therapist when I was in the beginning stages of, this self exploration. And I was trying to think through things. And I was like,
Right.
hey, like, I do enjoy deep conversations. At least I know that. And I do want to connect with people on a deeper level. How do you do that? Like, I was literally asking for instructions. I was like, okay, give me a manual, like,
Right,
step
like
one.
step one, step two.
How do you get people to talk about things? And then when I finally realized, I was like, you're gonna start with yourself. You're gonna actually be vulnerable first.
You got to share
And it's
first.
so easy.
Self
It's so
disclosure.
easy.
This is what I talked about
Yeah.
literally in episode 3 of this podcast. We were
Mm,
talking about
yeah.
self disclosure and how important that is to discovering who you are.
Mm,
So it's not even just like a deep conversation thing. It's like that is how
yeah.
you will find your unique aspects.
Mm. Because we all have a story to share, right? And
Yeah, and to you, it's your normal. So how do you know who you are and what's unique about you until you start letting other people see that and telling them things
oh,
and then
interesting,
getting feedback?
right? Because for you, it's like, well, is there any other way, right? And other people will be like,
Exactly.
wait, you think that? What?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's amazing how you can just be, if you are vulnerable first, or actually, I mean, for me, it doesn't actually feel vulnerable anymore. I guess it's like you
Right.
build up a
Because it's your
tolerance.
normal now. It's
Yeah,
such a
because I'm
better
like,
normal to have, I think.
you accept yourself and then you share it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's amazing how I had those realizations when I started doing it, how you can connect with somebody within 10 minutes so deeply by sharing deeper parts of yourself, and then they share, open up in return,
Yeah.
that then you might not see that person for a year and they're still going to remember you, versus you spend hours with people just talking about, weather and the sports and whatever,
The
and then
sports, there's always sports.
Always sports. I know nothing about, but
It's like
yeah.
that quote, right? People will never remember what you say, but they'll
Mm.
remember how you made them feel.
Feel. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's amazing. It's like a superpower, right?
Yeah. No, it is.
The
That's
ability, the Brene Brown thing.
right. Yeah. She's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And step one, if there is any step one, right? It's like you start with yourself. How do you be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
learn about you? Because that's how I figured it out, right? Once I had done the inner work and once I started finding my own weaknesses and my own vulnerabilities, I was like, okay, let me start. And I started to talk to people about them, right? Like friends, or I would just bring them up or something here and there. That's when I was like, oh, this is how it works. Right. So
Mm.
starting that kind of putting your attention inwards, right? And okay, we're techies, right? From Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Tech companies are spending what, billions of dollars maybe per month, like collectively, to get people's what?
Attention.
Exactly. Like it's that valuable.
Yeah.
And we
Mm.
put it outside all on everything else but ourselves.
Mm. Interesting. Wow.
If
Wow.
only you took that power and put it internally, right? Like
Right.
imagine what you could discover, what you could do.
Yeah, I'm still working on these kind of boundaries with myself
Hmm.
where I already realized that I have a relationship with this Kateryna thing.
With this
That actually
Katerina
the
thing.
longest relationship I'll ever have,
It's
right?
you are the person you will spend the most time with in your entire
Yeah,
life.
yeah. And at the end of the day, like that's the only person gonna be always there, right?
Yep. You can't get away from it.
So what I'm working on now to feel a bit better the boundaries, like I have alarms going off already, but I'm like, okay, I need to be a little bit more proactive. That, for example, last week, I'm in Playa del Carmen now, catching up with all these amazing human beings. And by the end of the week, I'm like, wait, but where's Katerina time?
You gotta have
I
your own
didn't see
time.
her. She's like there, like, hey, what about me?
That's why you like to do your own thing.
Oh, that's not true. guess I guess I'd take everybody's input and then make my own thing, right? But no, but it's not true. I feel like it's a balance, you know. At the end of the day, it
Definitely a
should be your
balance.
own thing, right? Because
Definitely a
it's your life.
balance.
But
But
yeah,
you have to have your you time, right? And like who is Katerina? What does she want? Who is Andre? What does he want? Like what are my
yeah,
some guy asked me years ago, like, what are your needs? What do you need? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know the answer. Like I was so out of touch with who Andre is, who he was, like back then. I had no idea.
yeah.
Um,
Because we never taught that. For me,
not
last
really.
year, especially summer. So I read this book, Nonviolent Communication.
Hmm.
I don't know if you heard about it. Um, I I was crying on chapter 2. I was just bawling. I was like, I had to put it away. I had to take a break for a week.
Yeah.
Just reading about our human needs, that we are super needy creatures. It's not only about the shelter and the basic stuff. It's like, oh, we need to be seen. We need to be accepted. We need to be heard. We
Yeah.
need to be we need to have social connection and all these human needs that I don't even know they exist.
Right.
And because
Right.
I don't even know that it's okay to have those needs, you know?
Because we think like don't need anything, don't want anything, right?
Yeah, and I think it's comes from childhood a lot too, because for
Hmm.
example, for me, I grew up in, it's the whole Soviet Union thing where you sacrifice yourself for the society, right? And that's the
Hmm.
culture. So you actually are being conditioned to suppress your needs
Right.
for the sake of somebody else. And then, if your parents are the same way and they teach you, you actually start feeling guilty. and ashamed for having certain needs,
Yes.
or like you push it down so much that you don't feel anymore
Hmm.
that that's even a need, and you don't have a vocabulary for it.
That was me.
Yeah. So, and then imagine, like, if you don't even know that you have those needs and that's okay, how would you even, how would you ever get it? Because for you to get it, you need
Right.
to communicate it, especially if it's with other people. You need
Yeah.
to be able to communicate the need. But if you don't even know that exists, if you're out of touch with yourself, like there is no way. Yeah. And I think this is it's something that I've been incorporating in my work too. It's not just personal. This book, for example, I think the Microsoft CEO was it's like a required book for all the like board people and the C-suite
Okay.
there, so it's like mandatory thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, because like if you, for example, I help tech teams, right, streamline communication. We work a lot with engineers, so they have needs and they have a lot of emotions going on
They
because they cannot communicate it and state it
can't
clearly,
write it in
right?
code.
I know, right? They cannot just like program then there's a very, very low likelihood it's going to happen. So, yeah, for me, the whole last year was okay, we're very needy. It's okay. And how about we communicate? But it's also not communicating with demands, right? That's the fine point between demands
Right.
and requests,
Mm.
right? Because you can be like, hey, with demand, you kind of you assuming that the person is obligated to give it to you, right? Which is nobody's obligated to do anything. But if you say like,
Yeah.
hey, here's a need I have, here's how you can fulfill it. Would you be willing to do this? And it's okay if no, but here's an opportunity, right? It's quite a balance,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it's impressive that you're bringing that into like the workspace,
Mhm.
because that's one thing I'm trying to do with Top Human is like, how do I bring the inner work, right? And like
Mhm.
working at this raw level of energy and like our emotions and learning all of that. How do I bring that into like the everyday life of other people?
Mm.
And how do I make people see how it's in their lives every day, whether they know it or not?
But I feel like you don't have to, because how you do one thing, it's really how
How
you
do you
do
do
everything.
everything?
So if people are transformed, and it doesn't matter where you start, like if you learn this at work, how to communicate your needs, I'm pretty confident when you go back to your family, you'll be like
Oh, totally.
you'll be better equipped to communicate, right? So
Yeah.
it translates. And even the life work balance, it's not like you're one human being, it's not two separate things, it's just one. So I feel like the work that you're doing and teaching people how to be more in touch with themselves and all these tools, that's just going to automatically translate. So
Yeah. No, right. I guess my mind was in like the unplugging people side of things, right? Which is like, how do you get people to realize like, oh, this is, important and it affects everything,
yeah,
right? Because it's, yeah, like you said, it's kind of the other way around. How you do everything is how you do one thing,
yeah,
because it's just all encompassing,
yeah.
you know.
And talking about the plugin, I think I feel I feel that having certain things where you put yourself in a situation when it's unavoidable for you to change, or like not to change. For example, to nature. I
Mhm.
recently had a calling to at some point maybe do a chain of glamping spots where I
Yeah.
can bring people and share it with maybe a membership program or something. Because once you put any human being in nature and it's more or less unplugged, right? Ideally with no
Like a
Wi-Fi.
retreat or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You cannot escape it. like your whole psyche just changes.
It really does. Like living in a box with air conditioning, like it's so not good for us. It's
Yeah,
not
right.
natural. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Since you've done a lot of the inner work,
Mm-hmm.
I think you said at the beginning, it's the most important piece,
Mm-hmm.
or more important than like the other work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what have been some of like your favorite things to do along that journey, or what are some of like the really big, if you're willing to share, like blind spots that you had that you discovered by doing the inner work that you were surprised about?
Oh,
There's two questions there, so pick the one you want to answer.
like, let me tell you the 2-3 years of deep work in a few minutes. Um, I can tell you a little bit about my psychedelic experience.
Okay, yeah, no, psilocybin, at least that's was my psychedelic of choice,
Yeah.
was really interesting. Um,
You do it more like a one time.
I did it several times, but never
Okay.
like a big dose. Never like a big
Mm.
dose. So very curious
What's a
to
big
hear.
deal for you?
Oh, the big dose. What is it, like 3 or 4 grams? Is like the hero
Mhm.
dose or whatever it's called. Yeah, I never did one that big.
Well, my big dose was a good experience for psychedelics. So I did a
Hmm.
3 gram, like a full
So you did
ceremony.
a full thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was with a shaman, like
Hmm.
proper ceremony ritual. It was absolutely life changing.
Wow.
It was incredible. I'm glad we set the intentions properly. She did a good job
Yeah.
because it's not about like taking a bunch of shrooms in the jungle.
No, it's you gotta when you take a
Yeah,
big
it's
dose like that, you have to really be intentional.
yeah, it's
Like,
the intention. And my intention was, I was like, you know what? I want to feel more connection with the world and more. And I was like, I don't even know what I don't know, but please come in
right.
and do whatever you need to do. I'm open. I will accept it. Just show me. And yeah, if I didn't have that intention, and if the shaman was like, no, no, you gotta surrender. You cannot fight anything. You gotta surrender. Like whatever happens, just surrender to the medicine.
Mm,
Um, because things were like going in, and it was total ego death. There was no such thing as Kateryna, and that's the biggest
wow.
thing that I got out of it. It was
Wow.
like, oh, how does Kateryna feel more connected to the world? It was like, oh, there's just
You are the
consciousness.
world.
Yeah, there's not even I. It's like there's consciousness, and
Yeah.
through me, because I had quite a lot of still insecurities of like, oh, who is Katerina to speak up and share
Ah,
her things and her experience, and like, is she deserving
low
things like,
self-worth, yeah, and yeah.
yeah, so all these insecurities. But then after that, I was like, it's not about Katerina. Is there's just like light inside of each of us, and we're all part of one, and it's my responsibility to express it. Like,
Have you
it's not about
seen
Katerina.
Fantastic Fungi on Netflix?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So you know with
Mhm.
the mycelium how it just grows like this, and like branches
Mhm.
and like I feel like we each have that inside of us. And it's just
Mm.
energy because what is mycelium? It's like the most energy only thing that exists that's alive,
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
And so it's like we're all that. We're all energy, right? And so like this little thing is just trying to grow and like see the world. Like there's that
Yeah.
inside all of us. And then we have kids and like that's a branch, right? Then,
Right.
just like a tree, like you have branches and everything. And so
Yeah.
we're all just this little ball of energy that's just trying to like grow and explore the world and be seen and but then
Hmm.
we're like, no, go this way and do this thing and look like that and don't be this tall
Right.
or don't be this short.
Right.
You
There are all the things.
just
Yeah,
gotta let
but
it
like,
like grow and
the biggest thing, like I understood it before in my mind, and maybe somewhere in my heart. But like one thing is to understand the concept, and another one is like it's like going to New York. One thing you can watch the movies about New York, you can read about it, you can
Yeah,
talk to people who've been there. But another thing,
I
you
can
actually
totally
show up
feel it.
and you experience it, and you're like, oh, now I got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was beautiful. Hmm.
but yeah,
Yeah,
me
I've
too.
done. So I've done microdosing for about probably 4 or 5 months when I was in Vancouver,
Hmm.
which British Columbia is the most open, liberal. They literally go down the streets and there are fungi shops all over the place. It's
Oh, no
called,
way.
yeah. So it's all, you know, legal stuff there. And actually, I started in a clinic, which was amazing because I didn't want to
Hmm.
do it, like people do recreational. I was like, okay, there needs to be an intention behind.
Right. Yeah, and they're starting
Yeah.
to study that in the US too. They're starting to bring it
Hmm.
into clinical settings.
Yeah, definitely. So that the clinic was integration of that and Reiki and
Hmm.
hypnosis and a whole kind of like very holistic approach.
Yeah.
So I started doing it, and it was incredible how it got me so introspective. It was like this support
Right.
system where I would, because the dose was super, super tiny. It was like 125. So it's like
Okay.
10 times, yeah, point 1 gram. So
Oh,
you
point
almost
one
don't
two
even,
five.
oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
like
so
super.
super tiny. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like people are like, oh, that's not even a dose.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? But it does change your brain a little bit where you become more introspective. So I would like totally have work calls, like you don't even feel it that much.
Yeah.
I started journaling. That changed my whole habit because before that, it was I would journal occasionally when I need to, but I think combination of this microdosing and also reading the book. What was I forgot the name of the lady, Julia somebody. She has the morning pages ritual
I don't know.
where basically you start your morning with just writing 3 pages, and it doesn't matter if you don't have any inspiration whatsoever. You just write down, I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what I'm
Right,
talking
right,
about, like
right, right, right. You just don't.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But then once you start it, you kind of like get in this state of flow,
Yeah.
right? And also in touch with your inner world. So for me, that was such a big catalyst because
Nice.
I got into a habit of writing. So I cannot not write anymore. So if I don't write for
Ooh.
a couple of days, I'm like, something is wrong. I feel like there's all this stuff stuck in me.
I'm
Like,
the same way with meditation. Yeah, with the mind work stuff.
oh, nice, nice. That's amazing. Yeah, so that was a big change and a big tool for me
Oh,
because
nice.
I feel like this is a way, and I guess it's reference to the programming world where you can debug
Hmm.
yourself.
Literally debugging ourselves. Like, that's what I do.
Because then you can ask all the questions. It can be just asking why, even a simple fact of asking why, maybe like 5 times. Like for example, for me, at some point, I was troubleshooting. I was like, why I sometimes enjoy, like, why is my room messy? When I was traveling, especially a few years back, I was like, why is it messy? Like, I know how to clean. I love cleaning, like, like, why is things all over the place? And then I was keep asking why. And then I got to a point where I was like, oh, it's because I want, it's kind of giving me a sense of freedom. Like, I can do, it doesn't need to be in a box. Like, I can have things
Right,
all over.
right, right, right.
Sense of freedom.
Yep.
But then once I got to that point, I was like, oh, it's actually, if my value is freedom in that point, I can achieve freedom by having it organized, so it gives me a good platform
You
to achieve
redefine what freedom
anything I
means.
want. Yeah. And that was it. That was incredible. Like since then, I don't have any messy rooms anymore, nothing, because it was just understanding that why. And I feel like that, to having a way by yourself to troubleshoot and debug kind of like your
Literally.
life date, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's I don't think I would have gone to the point to where I am of like one, doing all the work myself, and then two,
Mm-hmm.
now even like starting to teach other people if I wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
software developer.
Oh, wow.
Because
Okay.
what
Okay.
do we do as software developers? Like we debug.
Yeah.
And
And the
good
build
software
system.
developers don't just put a band-aid. You have to find the root
Mhm.
of the problem. Right?
Right.
And like asking five whys, that's one way, if five is even enough, depending on the thing. Right?
Right.
And so like finding the core thing and then like working at it at that level. And like you
Wow.
did, you redefined the word freedom. Like changing a
Mm-hmm.
definition, like that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty deep, right? If you can get there and like actually redefine that word for you, like that's huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's so much power in, in the software engineering analogy, actually.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
because
I
I've been
think so.
reflecting on it recently, how in the software world we think a lot of times in systems, right?
Yeah.
And actually, if you can apply the same thinking to feelings and things like that, right? And like making it more optimized. um, then if you like, in terms of debugging, how you were just describing, for me it's more like, okay, what's the most effective way to fix things, right? And when you trying to fix your thoughts, like, yeah, you can fix your thoughts to an extent, but then you might have one feeling, like one traumatic experience that happened to you that generates one feeling, and that one feeling gonna create thousands of thoughts, and then just gonna come back and come back and come back. So actually debugging at the level of thinking, it works to an extent,
But
but
it's
if you
not
actually
deep enough.
go, yeah, it's not deep enough. You'll have to, it's like put in band-aid, like you said, right? So if you actually go deeper and then you fix that feeling by looking at it, bringing it up and accepting it and then letting go, then all those thoughts are just going to disappear. So it's super,
Hmm.
super effective. And then I'm super excited to continue following your work with energy, because I think that's even
That's
a
the
level
rawest
deeper.
level.
Yeah, that's
Literally,
like,
you can't go
wow,
any
all this.
farther than
Yeah, so that's like the most effective in my substance.
that.
Like, that's the root cause.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's crazy. There was something you were saying. Oh yeah, the having a like thinking about our emotions. You were kind of saying
Hmm.
that, right? Which, first of all, if you think about it, it's like it's one of the most human things we can do,
To think about
to
emotions.
think about our feelings and to like process them in a systematic way,
Mm.
because animals don't do that. They can't. And we
Hmm.
think, and like the whole reason why we're human is because we think, and we have this prefrontal cortex, and language is a big part of it, but it's really
Right.
like that ability to really think and like decide what we think about, and past and future and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
if you can turn that to like your energy and your emotional side, your animal side, like that's one of the most human things we can actually do, which
Hmm.
is cool. And so like I love that idea. Literally like years ago, and I was, a couple years into this journey, I was thinking like I want to write a book called Logical Emotions.
Ooh, okay.
To like have this process, because we do like process. And as much as
Yeah.
emotions are this wave not particle way of being, right? Of
Hmm.
like it should just be. Yeah, but we've had decades of conditioning of being particles not waves, of being like very logical and systematic. And so if that's the way we're currently operating, we need to switch somehow. And so there's
Right.
ways you can, like getting out in nature, uh,
Hmm.
psychedelics, right? Plant
Right.
medicines. This is also like why
Yeah.
people drink. Like it's an unhealthy way, but it gets them out of that mindset. But if you
Yeah.
can have, if we can have a system for like actually processing and starting to look at the emotions, the energy,
Yeah.
then it
Yeah.
can literally just change everything for you.
I 100% agree. I think you're right with that it's not about abandoning our logical thinking and our minds,
Using
because
it.
we're so good at that. And, instead of starting from zero and going in this emotional world and not have no system to deal with that, it's about how do you use your mind and your system thinking to now apply to make that bridge to emotions,
Yeah.
but you don't start from scratch, right?
Yeah.
So it's, yeah. Oh,
Ah, man, I feel like we could talk for another hour, 2 hours. We'll have to do another episode at some point. You'll have to be back. We'll have to have you back on.
so what is it gonna be? It's gonna be episode 4.
This will be, I think, episode 4.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. I love this chat. Yeah, it's
I love this chat more than you love this chat.
Oh man. But I was thinking about this the other day. One of my ex-girlfriends found my Top Human Instagram, and she messaged me. She said, "It's wild to me that this is what you do now."
Wow.
And when we were dating, when I was 19, this is like, Jesus, over 10 years ago. She was a massage therapist. Like, she was kind of getting into this world already. She was like kind of in this space.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it, and it's just like, those of us who are like seeking truth, like truth will find those who seek it, is what I kind of came to. And it's always good to speak with someone else who's on that same path, on that same journey, right? Because we all eventually we find the same answers. It's just a matter of like getting a little closer, participating in the conversation, and like, let's keep getting closer and closer to like truth as we can.
And you can see those people right away. At least like I can now. Like I almost can look in the eyes. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I'm not there yet. Not yet. But working on it. Yeah. Well, thank you again. And we'll definitely do another one at some point.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let me know once you super. Now I want to go and listen to your first 3 episodes.
Yeah, you
I think
should.
the third one sounds like the third one's gonna resonate with
So the first one was really good because that was my friend Alden, who he's had some really interesting that was a very energy based conversation where he kind of got introduced to the world of energy in like playing with partners, like sexually. So that was really like in the tantra side of things. And then my episode 2 and 3 are the same person. We ended up talking for an hour and a half, so I split it into 2 episodes.
Wow. Okay.
So we talked for the first one, that whole conversation, and there's some stuff from that conversation that are like, it's a little out there. She's talking about how there's kids who can like read with a blindfold on, that can remote view, or like how someone can like see bones.
I believe it.
So like, that's for me, and I said this in episode 2 because I didn't. Some of that's like out there for me because like I haven't gone down that world enough yet. But she's been doing this stuff for like 10, 15 years. So, I mean, if you believe that, then definitely go listen to episode number 2, and then number 3 was the second half of that, where the conversation kind of turned into this: how do we self-discover? How do we discover, like, if I can see bones, I'm like, oh yeah, that's just what I see. But no one else can see that. Like, how are you ever going to find out that that's unique to you and that that's a gift that you have?
And I think it comes to what you were talking, that you need to share your story.
And that's literally that was literally her answer. And that, because it's self-disclosure. And I talk about it. I answered her how I'm reading this book about fear of abandonment called Love Me, Don't Leave Me. And it's about how do you work on fear of abandonment, but what do good relationships have? And one of those things is self-disclosure. And if you don't have that, then like growing up, again, it all starts where you're very young, right? If you don't have that growing up, then you're not going to have that in yourself, and then you're not going to do it as an adult.
Yeah, and if you're not self-disclosing to yourself and being comfortable with that, you're not going to self-disclose to other people.
Because we repress, we bottle things up, we push things down, we keep them in, and we don't let them out.
Wow. Oh, I love this.
Yeah, yeah.